I clutched the thermometer with trembling hands, staring at the glowing red numbers. 104.8 degrees. My 4-year-old son Noah lay in our king-sized bed, his tiny body shaking uncontrollably, his eyes rolling back into his head. A seizure. My baby was having a seizure. Noah, Noah baby, look at mommy, I screamed, turning him onto his side like the pediatrician had taught me. His lips were turning blue, his small chest heaved with each shallow, ragged breath. Outside, Seattle was drowning. The worst storm in 15 years had knocked out power across half the city. Lightning cracked across the sky, followed by thunder so loud the windows of our Medina mansion shook violently. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. 911. What's your emergency? My son is having a seizure. He has a fever of almost 105. Please, I need an ambulance. The dispatcher's voice was apologetic but firm. Ma'am, we're experiencing extremely high call volume due to the storm. All available units are currently responding to multiple emergencies. The estimated wait time for your area is 45 minutes to 1 hour. An hour? My son could die in an hour. I understand, ma'am. If you're able to transport him yourself, Seattle Children's Hospital is. I know where the hospital is. I hung up, my heart pounding against my ribs. I dialed my husband, Marcus. He was supposed to be at a late investor meeting in Bellevue. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Voicemail. I called again. This time he picked up on the 6th ring. What? His voice was sharp, annoyed. I could hear music in the background, smooth jazz, the clinking of glasses. Marcus, please come home. Noah is having seizures. His fever is almost 105. I called 911, but they said it could take an hour. I need you to help me get him to the hospital. A long sigh. A fever again? Serena, this is the 3rd time this month. Maybe if you actually knew how to take care of a child properly, he wouldn't be sick all the time. Tears streamed down my face. Please, Marcus. I'm begging you. He's turning blue. I'm scared. I'm in the middle of something important. Give him some Tylenol and put him in a lukewarm bath. I'll be home when I'm done. Then I heard it. A woman's voice, silky and familiar, purring in the background. Marcus, baby, come back. The champagne's getting warm, and I want to open my present. I knew that voice. Jade Rivers, his vice president of marketing, the woman who smiled at me at company events and called me Mrs. Blake with such sweet politeness. My husband's voice changed completely. Gone was the irritation, replaced by a tender warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in years. Coming, babe. Just give me a second. The line went dead. I stood frozen for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of complete devastation. Then I looked at my son, convulsing in the massive bed, and something inside me snapped. I wrapped Noah in a thick blanket, scooped him into my arms, and ran down the marble staircase, through the foyer, toward the garage. When the garage door opened, I stopped dead. Empty. Both cars were gone. The Tesla that was registered in my name was gone. This morning, Marcus had said his Porsche was in the shop and asked to borrow my car to pick up some investors from the airport. He had taken my car to his mistress. The private chauffeur's quarters were dark. Marcus had given him the night off. I had no car, no driver, no ambulance coming. But I had my son, burning up in my arms. I ran out into the storm. The rain hit me like needles, instantly soaking through my silk pajamas. Our estate was gated, the main road nearly a quarter-mile away. I ran barefoot down the cobblestone driveway, slipping twice, tearing the skin on my knees and palms, but never letting go of my baby. When I reached the main road, it was deserted. I stood there in the pouring rain, flagging down every car that passed, but they all sped by without stopping. Who could blame them? A soaking wet woman in pajamas, screaming in a storm. I must have looked insane. My rideshare app showed no drivers available. The battery on my phone dropped to 8%. I was about to collapse when an old pickup truck slowed down. A middle-aged man with kind eyes rolled down his window. "Miss, what are you doing out here? You need help?" I practically threw myself at his truck. "Please, my son is dying. I need to get to Seattle Children's Hospital. Please, I'll pay you anything." He took one look at Noah's blue-tinged lips and unlocked his door. "Get in. Don't worry about money." The drive to the hospital took 23 minutes. The longest 23 minutes of my life. I held Noah against my chest, whispering prayers I didn't know I remembered, while this stranger who smelled like sawdust and coffee drove like his own child's life depended on it. At Seattle Children's, I burst through the emergency doors, screaming for help. Nurses came running. They took Noah from my arms and rushed him through double doors that slammed shut in my face. The red light above the door turned on. Critical. A nurse approached me, her face a mixture of concern and judgment. "Ma'am, why didn't you call 911 immediately? A fever this high with seizures, if you'd waited any longer, there could have been permanent brain damage. Where is the father?" "Where was the father?" I laughed. A broken, terrible sound that echoed through the sterile hallway. "His father is popping champagne with his mistress." The nurse's expression softened into pity, which somehow felt worse than the judgment. I sat in the waiting room for 3 hours, shivering in my wet clothes, blood still dripping from my scraped knees. At some point, a kind orderly brought me a blanket and some bandages. I didn't move. I couldn't. To keep myself from going insane, I pulled out my dying phone. 3% battery. I should have called someone, my best friend, my lawyer, anyone. Instead, some masochistic impulse made me open Instagram. The first post on my feed made my blood turn to ice. It was from a private account I'd been secretly monitoring for months, an account belonging to Jade Rivers. The photo showed a woman's manicured hand intertwined with a man's hand. On the man's wrist was a Patek Philippe Nautilus, the limited edition one I had specially ordered from Geneva for Marcus's birthday last year. I had used my own inheritance money, not a cent from our joint accounts. When I gave it to him, he had kissed me and promised he would treasure it forever. The caption read, "He came through the storm just for me. Best birthday ever. Love you, M." The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations from Jade's friends. "Oh my God, girl, he's so obsessed with you. When is he leaving that boring wife already?" Jade had replied with a laughing emoji. "Soon. He said she's just a placeholder until the prenup expires. Then she's gone." A placeholder. For 5 years, I had been a placeholder. I had given up everything for this man. My family's approval, my inheritance, my identity. My father was Richard Blackwood, founder of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies on the West Coast. When I fell in love with Marcus Blake, a charming, ambitious nobody with a startup dream and nothing in his bank account, my father had warned me. He had called Marcus a gold digger, an opportunist, a snake. I had defended Marcus. I had screamed at my father that he was a snob who didn't understand true love. I had walked away from my family, my trust fund, everything. What my father didn't know, what Marcus never knew, was that I had secretly funneled money from a small inheritance from my grandmother into Marcus's company, anonymously, through a shell corporation called Northern Star Ventures. Every major investment that saved his startup in the early days came from me. I had hidden my identity to protect his ego. I had made myself small so he could feel big. And now, while our son lay fighting for his life, he was celebrating his mistress's birthday. My phone buzzed. 2% battery. A text from Marcus. "Stop being dramatic. Kids get sick. I'll be home in the morning." Something crystallized inside me in that moment. The love I had carried for 5 years, the love that had made me blind, stupid, and small, evaporated like morning fog. I didn't cry. I was done crying for Marcus Blake. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 3 years. My father answered on the first ring. "Serena?" His voice was rough with sleep but alert with concern. "It's 3 a.m. What's wrong?" "Daddy." My voice cracked. "I was wrong. About everything. I'm so sorry. I need to come home." There was a pause. Then my father's voice came back, strong and steady. "Tell me where you are. I'm sending someone right now. Seattle Children's Hospital. Noah is in the ICU. Daddy, I need lawyers. I need the forensic accountants. I need you to help me burn him to the ground." My father's response was immediate. "Done. And Serena? Welcome back, sweetheart." By dawn, Noah was stable. The doctors said I had gotten him there just in time. Another 30 minutes, and there could have been permanent damage. I sat by his bed, watching him sleep peacefully, when the door opened. My father walked in, still imposing at 62, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Behind him was Derek Hayes, the chief legal counsel for Blackwood Pharmaceuticals and my childhood best friend. My father took one look at my bandaged knees, my torn clothes, my hollow eyes, and his jaw tightened with barely contained rage. "I've waited 3 years to hear you say you were ready to leave him," he said quietly. "Everything is already in motion." Derek handed me a folder. Inside were documents I had prepared in secret over the past year, back when I first suspected Marcus was cheating. Prenuptial agreement, financial records, evidence of Northern Star Ventures' investments in Blake Technologies. "One thing you should know," Derek said. "Northern Star currently owns 68% of Blake Technologies' total equity. Technically, you own Marcus's company. You always have." I looked at my sleeping son, then back at the folder. "Freeze everything," I said. "His corporate accounts, his personal accounts, his credit cards. I want him to wake up tomorrow with nothing." Derek nodded. "There's more. I've been doing some digging. Jade Rivers has an apartment in Bellevue, a $2 million condo that's registered in Marcus's name. He paid for it with company funds. That's embezzlement. Flag it. We'll deal with it later." My father squeezed my shoulder. "What do you want to do about the company?" I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Kill it. Pull all Northern Star investments immediately. Call the loans. I want Blake Technologies bankrupt by the end of the week." My father smiled grimly. "That's my girl." Marcus Blake stumbled through the front door of our Medina mansion at 11 a.m., still wearing last night's clothes, reeking of champagne and perfume. "Serena," he called out, his voice hoarse, "where's my breakfast? And call the pediatrician about Noah. I suppose you want me to apologize for last night." Silence. He walked into the kitchen. On the refrigerator door, held up by a magnet, was a single white envelope. He tore it open. Notice of asset freeze and loan recall. All accounts associated with Marcus A., Blake, and Blake Technologies have been frozen effective immediately by order of Northern Star Ventures, majority shareholder. His phone buzzed, a notification from his bank. Account locked. Available balance, $0. Then another notification. Platinum card deactivated. Then another. Vehicle loan in default. Repossession initiated. Marcus stared at his phone, watching notification after notification roll in. His face went from confusion to disbelief to pure, white-hot panic. He ran upstairs to our bedroom. Empty. The closets were cleared out, all my clothes, all of Noah's things, gone. On my vanity sat my wedding ring next to a stack of divorce papers. He raced to his study, to the safe where he kept emergency cash and gold bars. The safe was open. Inside was nothing but a yellow post-it note in my handwriting. "This gold was bought with my inheritance. I'm taking it back. You can store your ego in here. It might fit, but barely." His hands shook as he dialed my number. A robotic voice answered, "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." He tried to call his CFO, his lawyer, his assistant. Nobody answered. Finally, he drove in his Porsche, which he'd retrieved from wherever he'd hidden it, to the Blake Technologies headquarters. The office was in chaos. Employees were packing boxes. The CFO was surrounded by panicked department heads. When Marcus burst in, demanding to know what was happening, the CFO's face went pale. "Northern Star pulled everything," she stammered. "All their investments, all their loans, they're calling it all in immediately. We have 72 hours to repay $47 million or we're in default. Marcus, who did you piss off at Northern Star? Nobody even knows who runs that company." Marcus's blood ran cold. Northern Star Ventures, the mysterious investor who had saved his company 3 times, the investor he had never met in person. "Find out who owns Northern Star," he demanded. Now. 3 hours later, he got his answer. Northern Star Ventures was a subsidiary of Blackwood Holdings, and Blackwood Holdings was owned by Richard Blackwood, his father-in-law, which meant the money that had built his empire had come from Serena. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the wall, as the truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. His useless wife, his boring wife, his placeholder wife, she owned him. She had always owned him. He drove to Seattle Children's Hospital. If he could just see Serena, explain, apologize, she loved him. She had always loved him. He could fix this. But when he arrived at the pediatric ICU, 2 security guards blocked his path. "Private wing," one said. "No unauthorized visitors." "I'm Noah Blake's father. That's my son in there." The guard checked his tablet, then looked at Marcus with barely concealed contempt. "Your name is not on the authorized visitor list. Mrs. Blackwood has specifically instructed that you are not to be admitted." "Mrs. Blackwood? Her name is Blake. She's my wife." The guard's expression didn't change. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave before we call the police." Marcus stumbled backward. Through the glass doors of the private wing, he caught a glimpse of a figure standing by a window, a woman in an elegant coat, her posture straight and proud. She turned slightly, and their eyes met. It was Serena, but not the Serena he knew. This woman looked at him like he was a stranger, no worse than a stranger, like he was nothing. She turned away without a word. That image would haunt Marcus for the rest of his life. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in destruction. Blake Technologies filed for bankruptcy. Investors sued for fraud. The SEC launched an investigation into the embezzlement scheme involving Jade Rivers' apartment. And then the press conference. I stood before a room full of reporters, wearing a simple black dress, no jewelry except my mother's pearl earrings. Next to me was Derek Hayes and my father. "I am here to address recent speculation about my marriage to Marcus Blake," I began, my voice steady. "On the night of October 15th, my 4-year-old son suffered a severe febrile seizure. His temperature was nearly 105 degrees. I called 911, but due to the storm, the wait time was over 45 minutes. I called my husband for help." I paused, letting the silence build. He was not at an investor meeting, as he had told me. He was celebrating his mistress's birthday at the Four Seasons Bellevue. He told me, and I quote, "Maybe if you actually knew how to take care of a child properly, he wouldn't be sick all the time." Then he hung up. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Derek pressed a button, and a split-screen image appeared on the monitor behind me. On the left, security camera footage of Marcus entering the Four Seasons with Jade Rivers, carrying champagne and roses. On the right, dashcam footage from the pickup truck, showing me drenched in rain, clutching my seizing son, banging on the driver's window for help. The timestamp on both images, 11:47 p.m., October 15th. "A father who pops champagne while his son is dying is not a father," I said. "He is a stranger, and I will not allow a stranger to have any claim to my child." The comments section of every news article exploded. Within hours, Number Justice for Serena was trending. Sponsors pulled out of any company Marcus had ever been associated with. His name became synonymous with betrayal. But Marcus didn't go quietly. A week after the press conference, a viral video appeared online. It showed Marcus's elderly mother, crying into the camera, accusing me of being a heartless rich girl who had stolen her grandson and destroyed her son's business out of jealousy. "She never let me see my grandchild," Mrs. Blake sobbed. "She thinks because she's rich, she can just throw people away. My son worked so hard, and she ruined him just because he went to one party." The video gained traction. Some commenters began to turn against me. "Maybe she's just a bitter rich woman," they said. "Maybe Marcus isn't that bad." I watched the video in my father's study, my expression calm. "They want to play the victim?" I said softly. "Fine. Let them climb high. The higher they go, the harder they fall." 2 days later, I released the recording of that phone call from the hospital night. The full, unedited recording. The public heard Marcus's cruel dismissal. They heard Jade cooing in the background. They heard my desperate pleas and his cold response. Then I released the financial records showing that every dollar of Blake Technologies' success had come from my family's investments. Then I released the documentation of the $2 million embezzled for Jade's apartment. And finally, I released the most devastating evidence of all. During the bankruptcy investigation, my private investigators had discovered something that made my blood run cold. Jade Rivers and my mother-in-law had been in contact for over 2 years. They had conspired together, and their messages were still saved in Jade's cloud backup. Mrs. Blake had been adding an herbal compound to the soups she brought me during her visits, something Jade had sourced from overseas. The compound caused hormonal disruption. It explained my irregular cycles. It explained the miscarriage I had suffered 2 years ago, the pregnancy I had never told Marcus about because I wanted it to be a surprise. My mother-in-law had killed my unborn child to make room for her son's mistress. When that evidence went public, there was no more sympathy for the Blakes. There was only disgust. Marcus was arrested for embezzlement and tax fraud. Jade was arrested at the Canadian border, trying to flee with forged documents. Mrs. Blake was arrested for assault and involuntary manslaughter. At the final trial, I did not attend. I sent Derek in my place. I was done looking at their faces. Marcus received 12 years in federal prison. Jade received 8. Mrs. Blake, due to her age and declining mental state, was committed to a psychiatric facility indefinitely. Noah's birth certificate was amended. His last name was changed to Blackwood. In the space where father should have been listed, there was only a blank line. 3 years passed. I rebuilt my life. I took over as CEO of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals when my father retired. I enrolled Noah in the best schools. I watched him grow from a sickly child into a healthy, happy, brilliant boy. And I found love again. Derek Hayes had been my rock through the entire ordeal, the childhood friend who had helped me escape, the lawyer who had fought for me, the man who had held me when I broke down crying after seeing Noah's amended birth certificate. We didn't rush. We took our time. But eventually, Derek moved in with us, and Noah started calling him Dad. One winter evening, I was leaving a charity gala in downtown Seattle with Derek and Noah. We were laughing about something silly Noah had said when I saw him. A homeless man huddled near the valet station, holding a cardboard sign. He was painfully thin, his clothes torn, his face gaunt and hollow. He looked up as we approached. It was Marcus. He had been released early due to a terminal illness, lung cancer, I'd heard. With his assets seized, his reputation destroyed, and his family either imprisoned or institutionalized, he had nowhere to go. He stared at me, at Noah, at Derek. Recognition flickered in his sunken eyes, followed by something like desperation. "Serena," he croaked. "Please, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Just let me see him. One last time. He's my son." Noah looked at the stranger with confusion. He didn't recognize the man who had fathered him. How could he? Marcus had rarely been home even when we were married. Derek stepped in front of us, shielding us with his body. "Sir, you need to leave." Marcus reached out with a trembling hand. "Please. I'm dying. Just 1 minute with my boy." I looked at the man I had once loved with my whole heart. The man I had sacrificed everything for. The man who had thrown me and my son away like garbage. I felt nothing. Not hatred, not pity, just emptiness. "You had 4 years of minutes," I said quietly, "and you chose to spend them with her." I turned to my family, my real family. "Let's go home." We walked to our car without looking back. Derek opened the door for me, then helped Noah into his car seat. As we pulled away, I saw Marcus in the side mirror, still standing there, arm outstretched, watching the taillights of our car disappear. A month later, I received word that Marcus Blake had died in a homeless shelter, alone. I didn't attend the funeral. Neither did anyone else. Spring arrived in Seattle with cherry blossoms and sunshine. On our private beach on Whidbey Island, Derek got down on one knee. "You are the strongest, most incredible woman I have ever known," he said. "And I have loved you since we were kids, fighting over whose turn it was on the swings. Serena Blackwood, will you marry me?" I said yes. Noah ran over, squealing with excitement, and Derek scooped him up with one arm while pulling me close with the other. My father watched from the deck, a rare smile on his face. As I looked at my son's bright eyes and my future husband's loving face, I realized something. The greatest revenge against someone who betrayed you isn't making them suffer. It's living a life so full of joy that they become nothing but a distant, forgettable shadow. Marcus Blake was gone, and I was finally, completely free.